Welcome to the Block and Tackle Show, hosted by Karl Block. Karl is a partner in the law firm of Loeb & Loeb here in Los Angeles, California. He will be tackling some of the biggest issues in business today. Listen, learn, and enjoy as he leaves no stone unturned during deep conversations with some of today's most amazing business leaders. Welcome to the show.
Okay, so, with any profession, with any goal, you have successes and you have failures. Tell us about some of the failures that you experienced and what you learned from them.
So I would say one of the biggest failures I experienced as an athlete, which translated to the rest of my life, but back in college when we were trying to make the World Cup team that would travel internationally, and I'd been trying out for almost 6 years, and a month before the World Cup, after making it for 6 straight years, and I was one of the youngest on the team, I tore my ACL. And it was also my senior year at Maryland, a month before our ACC championships. And there was a lot of pressure for me to be out there and a lot of pressure on the team to win. And I blew out my knee, and it was so devastating. I think about it now compared to, childbirth and all those kinds of things. But at the time it was devastating. And I got cut from the World Cup team. I couldn't finish my senior season. I let my teammates down. I let my team down, my coaches. And, and then it's a long road back. It's 9 months of being in, off your feet and tons of rehab. And I cherish that experience because I think I was soft up until then. And I had a lot of things that worked out for me athletically. And I needed to have like a massive hurdle. I needed to have the door closed so that I could figure out how to open it back up and get around it. And I think it just taught me, when you're feeling really low and you're in a dark place and you don't necessarily have a lot of experience with that, you have to pick yourself up. You have to figure out who you are. And I figured out who I was through that 9 months. And I think those, that gritty time in my life when I had to figure out how to be successful in other ways and deal with being cut and deal with not playing lacrosse. And it just gave me a set of confidence going into the next phase of my life about what it's like, what you're supposed to do when things get hard. And I've seen our girls go through a lot of that. And I see them come out on the other side completely changed and completely different people. I believe that if I hadn't torn my ACL and been, cut from those sports and left behind, and I'm not sure I would be sitting at Boston College, because you gotta figure out how to grind and be gritty, and you figure out who you are when things are really bad. So, and again, I understand and completely understand that tearing your ACL is nothing compared to, other real life challenges, but that was big for me at the time.
And it sounds like, as you said, you were forced to learn how to be successful in other ways.
Yeah.
As part of that, and not just focus on being the player that you were.
Right. You have to figure out, how to be a leader, even when you can't have this tool that you've normally had. You have to figure out how to work hard in different areas. You have to figure out how to have a good attitude, even when things aren't going good for you. And these are just life lessons. I have someone at Boston College who I've seen transform, and they came in as almost perfect human, but somehow through this adversity, she's leaving even, 3 times the leadership skills, 3 times the love. This kid's going to take over the world. And I think a lot of it has to do with similar adversity. And I think those moments in college teach you and set you up for the rest of life.
And I think BC's pretty good at trying to train people to do that. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
So, and then, coming back to the organizational dynamic, you're not a golf coach. You're not coaching people to do one-on-one sport. You've got a team, and you're teaching them, like you said, how to collaborate, how to communicate, to do teamwork.
Yep.
But you notice teams sometimes in sports where, they do teamwork, but maybe they don't actually like each other that much. And you're known to have a very cohesive and inclusive team where it seems like a lot of your young women, they just really get along. They like each other. It's enjoyable to be part of this team, the organization that you have. How do you develop that kind of chemistry?
So, I have to give a lot of credit to my assistant coach, Jen Kent. She's got 6 children. She's a little bit older than me. She is very experienced with people and relationships. And I think between the two of us, we've tried, and she's been with me since the very beginning at Boston College. I think between the two of our personalities and the two of our skill sets and strengths, we have figured out how to get our girls to accept everybody. I think it's so hard to do that, but when you can accept people who are different, then you've really opened up, opportunity for success and collaboration. And I think it's so important for people to not be the same when you're building a team, and to not look the same and not talk the same and not have the same family structure and not come from the same state, and all these differences that actually come together and can make you have a really powerful team. Now, with that, it's that we have our challenges every single year, but I would say the stabilizer of our program and the most important thing that we do with that is we teach these girls how to be more unselfish. And it is the key ingredient for us in terms of the collaboration of our team, because it's, to me, so important for the rest of your life. Like I talked about being believable, I think the next most important thing is to be unselfish. And when you have a group of women who are all very different, we're trying to get them to accept each other, love each other for who they are, figure out the strengths, pick up for each other's weaknesses. But all of that is based on how unselfish you can get each individual to be. And I think nowadays they're teaching people to be a little bit more self-aware. What do you need to be successful? How do you need to be? And expect the exterior, I don't know the right word, the outside world to adapt to what they need. And really, we do the opposite here. Like, we try to be very streamlined and consistent year after year, team after team, trying to get our girls to be unselfish. And my Jen Kent, my assistant coach, is really good at detecting when people are being authentic, when they're really being unselfish, or where they're being unselfish to please the coaches. But I have found that when building a team, if you get a group of girls, a group of young women together whose primary responsibility is to find ways to be unselfish, it is difficult to beat that. And we have had a lot of success over the years building up these teams where, it's you before me. It's always us, but it's you before me. And that, I think, is a dangerous combination when you have that type of leadership, that type of fellowship. And that's an important quality for going on beyond college, is to be believable and to be unselfish in your pursuit.
I think if people perceive you to be authentic and unselfish, it garners a lot of respect.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, because you do this, because you encourage this, because you're not afraid of differences, your backgrounds, where you grew up, how you live your life, whatever, you're not sort of looking the other way. You're addressing it head on.
Right.
And you're basically telling them this is what is going to make you great.
Right.
And probably you're going to make lifelong friends who you might never have met or never dealt with if you didn't go on this lacrosse journey.
Right. And I think there's strength in being unselfish. I think the message that we teach is, if you want to be really successful in your life, in your family life, in your work life, in the community, there is strength in being unselfish, because you are displaying, to me, the ultimate form of collaboration. I don't know better. I'm not better. We are better. You're better than me at this, and et cetera. But I just think it's a really good tool for these girls to learn as they go on into life.
That's amazing. So, we've sort of talked a little bit about the modern era that we lived in, but, you must have had to evolve, had your coaching style evolve to deal with today's players versus the players of yesteryear. They have greater expectation, a lot more information is thrown at them, not necessarily accurate information, but a lot of information is thrown at them. There's a lot of people in their ear. Everybody's a genius. Everybody is telling them all the right things. You have wisdom, and maybe to some degree, you may be seeing this with your kids now, like how hard it is. So what have you done to sort of evolve so you can continue to connect with your players?
So I think the biggest thing is there is a big culture shift. There's, it's a bit different now than it was, a long time ago, where it was more tough love was acceptable, and my way or the highway was, a true form of leadership, a common form of leadership. What we have decided to do, because we have learned a lot through mistakes and through, different strategies that maybe we used to have, we would learn through, negative experiences with our players or their families, how those things don't necessarily work anymore. What I said with my boss a couple years ago is I said, I just need some help, because I'm not going to change the expectations. I'm not going to change our goals. I refuse to. If that's what you're asking me to do, I can't work here. I'm going to win a national championship, and I'm going to have high standards, but I need to figure out how to express this differently so that I can learn how to get through to my players who are a little bit different nowadays. And what we decided is that we're not going to move the goalposts in. We're going to just communicate far more effectively, far more frequently than we would. For example, I'll take the most basic example. Hey, you're late. Go run. That necessarily may not work anymore. That player's embarrassed. They're pissed at you, and then they're going to have a bad practice, and then they're going to go back to the locker room and talk about all those negative things. Whereas what I would probably do is I would say, hey, you're late. That's not up to our standards. You're going to run, and then I want to talk to you as soon as practice is over. And I would sit with them or take them out to lunch or bring them into my office and explain to them why it's unacceptable, how it makes me feel, how it makes their teammates feel, and why it's not good for them long-term to be showing up late to things. And I think that's really ultimately what we have to do, is we don't change the standards. We just communicate way more about why that standard matters.
I would imagine in those conversations too, it's also interactive. You're not just lecturing them. You are letting them be heard. Maybe there's something they're insecure about. Maybe there's something that happened in their life that they're harboring, and they haven't told anybody, and it's affecting their ability. Okay. And you wouldn't know that if you just said, hey, run and don't do it again.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that's part of developing a relationship with your players is hearing them out. And, then you build a little bit of trust, and then they receive harsher messages, or any messages for that matter, a little bit better. I mean, you can penetrate way better with your players when they know you're going to listen, when they know you're going to hear them. And that's ultimately how you build a relationship.
That's fantastic. And obviously the results speak for themselves. So that's really cool. So, I mean, we've talked a lot about the values you have and your philosophy and what works for you at Boston College, and which of course are a very, very large measure of why you've been so successful. But if you were to talk to high school coaches or Division III coaches or young assistant coaches coming up, what would you tell them about teamwork, character, cohesiveness, and accountability. Is there something that you would say that, they probably would love advice for somebody who's reached the highest levels at what you do?
At the cost of maybe sounding redundant, I would say that any leader in any industry at a young age, you have to learn from the people you trust and respect, whether that's your family or famous leaders or mentors within your industry. But you have to figure out who you are so that you can develop a philosophy that supports who you are, because that will make you more attractive to follow, because people will believe you. And I think with that, you have to figure out how you want to hold people accountable. Does that mean you communicate a certain way because that's what works for you or that's what you're good at? How do you want to demand, the morale and character of your team? Because I do think a lot of people out there, at least a lot of young coaches I'm seeing, are expecting this amazing product out on the field without looking deeper into the character of your team and the morale of your team. And I would say, again, that is based on the leader and what's important to them about their standards and building a culture. I think the common mistake that a lot of people are making is they're trying to be too much like someone else. And I think you can adapt concepts and adapt, to some of those people that they feel are highly respectable. But I think ultimately it's to find the courage through your experiences to be yourself. And then I think, and this is not anything new, but I have hired people on my staff that are far superior at many skills than me. And I think that just supports, being believable, because when you have people that can pick up the slack in places where you're not strong, then you're more apt to be yourself in those leadership roles. But I think the other thing I would say is to be unafraid to be strong and be unafraid to take risks and, find a way that you can be a courageous leader. And again, I think that's really knowing who you are and who you aren't. But, I'm so excited to, be able to talk about that, because I fell so flat on my face so many times by being myself, and I was ridiculed and talked to by my bosses and lost national championships and really high stakes situations because I chose to be myself. But I didn't know any other way. And I think through that, you learn and you get better. And I don't think I would do it any differently.
So, obviously the results also speak for themselves, that, you may have learned who you were and grown from doing it. And obviously you're amazingly successful. I just want to touch on one thing that you said, and it came up in a podcast that I did just really recently with a guy named David Bishop, who's an executive coach. And we were talking about management styles. And one of the things that he said was that Jeff Bezos at Amazon had the courage to try to find people who were better than he was and let them do what they needed to do. He probably learned some things from them, but he wanted to empower them to let them lead and succeed. And now here we are having a discussion about college sports, and that's exactly what you do. So,
oh my God. Yeah. I think, when we're in front, my coaching staff, we're putting on a show every single practice. The girls are analyzing everything we do, everything we say, our body language, everything. And so I think the fact that I have, a Sam Apuzzo, a Jen Kent, a Callahan Kent, here, everyone knows what everyone's expertise are. And when they see me allowing those guys to do their thing, which sometimes means disagreeing with me or doing things a different way, and I'm okay with it, and they're okay with it when it happens to them, that vision of collaboration is the ultimate message to our girls when you're trying to build a team, whether it's a lacrosse team or a company I think Jeff Bezos has it down, and I've tried to mimic that but I think, again, you have to be courageous enough to let people, do what they do best, and in front of other people, do it better than you. And you got to figure out how to get comfortable with that, because that is really good leadership, in my opinion.
No, it's excellent. And the other thing is, your young women, they're seeing this. They're seeing, hey, this isn't just something theoretical that I might have learned in the school of business or in a business class. I'm literally seeing in the organizational dynamic, the head of the organization is bringing in people and empowering them. And then maybe they'll think, and I'm sure they do, and I'm being empowered as a young player. I'm being empowered to be better.
Right.
And this is the process. And I'll mature and go on to do bigger and better things because I've learned these skills just looking at the coaching staff. Right.
Yep. Exactly. And I hope that we always set that example. We're probably not perfect, but I'm very comfortable with my assistant coaches being better than me at certain things. I think it's critical because, we're a team, and that's it. That's how teams work.
Well said. Really well said. Okay, so I want to just talk to you about, the biggest disruptor in college sports now, NIL, name, image, and likeness. I'm sure pretty much everybody who's watching this has heard about what NIL is. It's clearly reached Boston College, and I'm sure it's reached your program, right?
Right. Yes.
So what positive things have happened for you and your program through NIL?
NIL is a disruptor, but I do think we're getting a better handle on it, nationally. I have no idea what's going to happen in the next 10 years, but I can certainly speak to Boston College and the team that they have created here to support all the sports. I know I live a little bit in a tunnel, but I know how supported I feel through NIL and the team that we have here at Boston College. I mean, they do such a great job of providing these opportunities for our student athletes who do work so incredibly hard. And we've got a great team of people who have really stepped up in the last couple of years. I think our team does, I would say, maybe the best in the country in terms of NIL in women's lacrosse. But Boston College has really done a great job of pushing while keeping ourselves really morally intact about the whole philosophy of NIL. And I think that's really difficult to do. So I'm constantly impressed by the way BC has handled themselves with this, because I do think you can quickly go overboard and it's a slippery slope. But I've seen the way Boston College operates, and I've seen the way they've treated my kids, and internally, the operation is very morally sound, but it's also, they're doing a good job of keeping us really competitive too, because it is the current landscape. Unfortunately, take it or leave it, it is. But I'm really proud to be a part of the team at Boston College. I think they do a phenomenal job.
Okay, so and let's unpack a little bit of this for people who don't know. There's been schools that are just throwing money at players just because they were a 4-star or a 5-star recruit, or the number of sacks they had, or whatever they did in whatever sport. At Boston College, there's a community service aspect of your NIL. And so they don't just hand out money. You've got to actually do volunteerism, right?
Yep.
And if you don't show up to the events, or you don't do the volunteering, you don't get your NIL money. Isn't that right?
Absolutely. Not only do you not get your NIL money, but you're going against, the core values of Boston College, which is to serve the community and to be an ambassador for Boston College. But yeah, there's not, and that's what I mean when I say that they're doing it a really good job of keeping a moral standard, is because they do keep the kids accountable. You have to show up and you have to want to be there. And I know they're choosing the right people to give these opportunities to, because it is building our brand. And again, they do a really good job. And for example, our girls, they do community service, and because of the breaks that we have naturally in our calendar year, Thanksgiving and Christmas and summer, the girls are traveling, they're in different states, and they're doing community service in all these different kinds of states at different times of the year. So, they're able to help them out with their personal schedule, but also community service can be done anywhere. And so our girls have, been involved in a lot of different, opportunities all over the country, and it's been great.
Well, I mean, look, we talked about earlier, you're one of your main credos. You're not going to be selfish and be on this team.
No.
And so, I wouldn't expect that there'd be a lot of women who, would be on your team and say, no, I'm not going to go volunteer at that shelter. I'm not going to go mentor young girls.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it just, once you embrace the idea of not being selfish and giving to others, it's okay. Hey, I'm already learning this, and now I'm even going to get money to do more of it. So I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's good. Beautiful. And I think it's probably one of the reasons why our athletes on our lacrosse team get a lot of opportunities, is because our girls do show up with the right attitude and very authentic, and they do a good job.
Well, part of that is because of you, of course. Mm-hmm. I assume it's helped you retain players to stay maybe an extra year, or not to transfer, or even maybe to get somebody to come to Boston College, recognizing that you would never take a player who just came for the money. They have to really embrace what you do and what you're about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think most of our NIL stories are more, it's not about giving players money to stay or giving players money to not transfer. It's more, a couple of our stories where we had a fifth year who had another year, whose only opportunity to stay with us was to have an NIL opportunity and allow that to help compensate, or to allow that to help with the compensation of their school. So it's not going in there, it's not cash in their pockets. They're doing all this community service and all this good for the school. And we were able to retain a fifth year, or, even a sixth year. And so I think those are more of our stories at Boston College Lacrosse. I'm not sure we'll ever get into, anything with just straight cash, or, I mean, not straight cash, but you know what I mean?
No, I know. You're not
pay to play.
The mercenary culture is toxic for many, and some schools, I don't want to call out any schools in your conference, and I'm not sure if they even have a women's lacrosse program, but there are schools in your conference who have learned how toxic it is when you're going at auction for student athletes. It's very dangerous.
Well, it's totally against our culture. So I don't know how it would ever even work once we got them here. How do we unwind all of that once they're here, if that's how we got them here?
No, then that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. So look, I've really enjoyed having you here today. I think our viewers and listeners are really going to like this. I don't think there's a lot of these kinds of things where we focus on leadership and character and accountability and all the things that you believe in and that Boston College believes in, instead of, the X's and O's of the sport or what happened in last week's game and such. Yeah. So I think for coaches out there, and for athletes out there, and for people who are interested in college sports and the development of young women into tomorrow's leaders, they're going to find this very, very insightful. So thank you for coming, Coach Walker-Weinstein.
Thank you very much for having me. It's fun to talk about all this stuff. I'll reflect a little bit more, and hopefully I'll learn, but thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Oh, no, my pleasure. And for anybody that has questions, you can email me at Karl, of course, Karl with a K, at blockandtackleshow.com. The and is A-N-D. It's not an ampersand. If they're questions for Coach Walker-Weinstein, I'll send them on. If they're just for me, it's fine. But we welcome all your input. And we hope that here at the Block and Tackle Show that you've enjoyed this. Thanks for tuning in. If you want more info on the show, please visit blockandtackleshow.com. And you can also email me at Karl@blockandtackleshow.com. Thanks for tuning in.